LGBTQ Pride Month with events and celebrations all around the world. But what is the actual history behind it, and why do we celebrate in June? Now, sometimes we hear the argument, why is gay pride necessary? Well, perhaps that comes from simply not being aware of the deeper roots, so we thought we'd share them with you. Pride Month grew as a way to celebrate members of the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer community in the face of the discrimination and violence many have faced and continue to face. Now, June was selected to commemorate something called the Stonewall Riots back in 1969. The Stonewall Inn was a rare spot in New York known to be accepting of the members of the gay community, but police routinely raided gay bars throughout the 60s. Officers lost control of their raid on the Stonewall Inn as members of the gay community fought back. Those protests continued over a matter of weeks, which then led to a movement from within the community of encouraging people to be open about their sexual orientation without fear of arrest. So now that we have a better understanding of the history, more and more cities are launching events for the whole family to celebrate the LGBTQ community. As we wrap up the first half of the month, here are some of the events still scheduled around the Puget Sound region. Now, in Seattle, you may have heard that's one of the bigger ones. The 45th Annual Pride Parade is Sunday, June 30th. But there's also Pacific Northwest Black Pride, which is hosting a Color Me Proud event on Saturday, June 9th. In Bellevue, the Bellevue Family YMCA is hosting the Bellevue College Pride Festival tomorrow. Tukwila is hosting its first ever Pride event on June 15th, and Renton is hosting Teen Pride on June 22nd. In fact, it's also put on by teens. In Olympia, Capital City Pride is June 23rd. Sammamish is hosting a Pride art exhibition on June 24th, and the celebrations continue well beyond June. In July, Tacoma Pride, July 12th through the 21st, with the main event on July 13th. Now, that main event on July 13th is free. It has performance stages, dance tents, kids zone, even a beer garden. And then in August, Everett's second annual Pride Night is August 22nd at Everett Memorial Stadium. It's with the Everett Aqua Sox. So we have a whole list and all the dates and everything you need to know, as well as the history we just talked about in an article on our website. Just text the keyword Pride to 206-448-4545. I think that it's such a celebratory time,
Yes.
but it's important to know where it came from and why it's important that we all consider it.